Welcome to the first episode of A Walk in the Woods at Midnight, our scary movie review. I'm Jess, and this is Jenny,
Hello.
and it's Jenny's birthday, so happy scary birthday, Jenny.
Thank you. I prefer scary birthdays, so this one was just right.
Good. And today we are reviewing House on Willow Street and Suspiria.
That's right.
And we decided that we're going to do a straight review, spoiler-free review of House on Willow Street, but then we're going to do a spoilery review of Suspiria because it's so complex and has multiple levels and layers. And Jen even watched the 70s version of Suspiria that she can compare it to that. That one will be spoilery, so we'll alert you to that when we get to it, but we're just going to go straight ahead and do a regular old review without spoilers of A House on Willow Street. I can tell you that it's in the description of A House on Willow Street that desperate kidnappers pick the wrong person to kidnap because they end up kidnapping someone who's a demon.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like I guess it's sort of like the Ransom of Red Chief, that O. Henry story where they kidnap that really spoiled kid and then they just want to give him back.
Right.
So
Good
this
call.
one is a scary, scary version of that. I actually thought of that because I loved that when I was, I don't know, I was in high school, and this is an extreme version of that. So that's kind of the prototype there.
Well,
So
anybody that can quote O. Henry is cool with me. My dad and I used to read O. Henry together when I was a wee lad, so that was a great poll. I
love it.
Yeah, I still have his book of O. Henry stories. So, needless to say, things start out going horribly wrong. They kidnap this girl who has apparently a father who has access to a lot of diamonds, and they want to get her father to, in exchange for her, they want the diamonds.
Right. And there's a little bit of, just to kind of set that up a little bit, there's kind of a reason why he's chosen, and this is, I will not spoil it, okay? But the main character, who is not the kidnapped one, the woman who is sort of like the lead, like the one who's leading this ring of kidnappers, has something to do with that history. Like it had something to do with her parents, and the fact that this guy had in some way kind of screwed them over, thereby screwing her over. And it kind of, I think it has a lot to do with that. And I think there's a lot about kind of like guilt and resolving that kind of thing throughout.
There's a history there.
There's a history there. We won't say what it is,
right,
but there is one.
But we can say there should be a spotlight on the two lead actresses, that actress you're talking about there, and the demon who they kidnap, because those two are legit really good actresses, and they do an excellent job acting in that. Whereas, this is my opinion.
Yeah.
The other three male leads do in terms of acting are from average to possible nepotism, in my opinion. the getaway driver, I think, must have been somebody's nephew or something. And he was pretty wooden.
It was weird because it's kind of like the opposite of kind of what happens a lot in mainstream Hollywood, where you kind of have these meaty parts for the men, where, because people are thinking from that perspective, and then the women are kind of like just there as for whatever reason, because women exist in the world and there has to be some reality parallel there. I don't know. But in this case, the women really are the forces, I think, of this. So the lead woman, the lead non-demon woman, I
The
think,
lead kidnapper.
the
Yeah.
lead kidnapper, thank you. She, I don't really know much about these actors at all, but I know you had asked about that just a little bit. This was a South African film, but and I believe the writer and director are South African. And then the lead actress, I believe, is Australian, and she was like a model and an actress and, you know, some things like that, but very local. And then the other woman, the demon, who I think is really pretty. I don't know. She's interesting. I think she's pretty good. She definitely looks freaky. She has this charming thing where her eyes kind of go different ways, which is kind of super cute in real life. But as a demon, it adds a layer of like otherworldliness. It's a,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so she's pretty great, and she's Canadian, and she had a kind of a, you know, there was some kind of a TV series that she was on for a little while, which I
Okay.
have never seen. I can't pretend to be an expert in that at all on either of these women, but
Right.
they definitely kind of were the ones to carry the movie, and the guys were just kind of like stuck on, and they were much more flat characters. So even if they were good, I don't know that they would really have a much to do, you know.
Right. The women were the focus in this movie. Yeah.
Yes.
They were really interesting, fully fleshed out characters. And I, as far as I mean, they get the demon into the warehouse, and things go start almost immediately going horribly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And they tend to they don't immediately turn on one another, but you know things are going to head that way. I don't want to give it away, but they I don't know. I don't want to spoil it, but they realize that that things just aren't going the way a normal kidnapping should.
Yes, yes. Yeah, exactly. And you know, I think the one thing that I, you know, there were a couple things where I was sort of like, this is, I mean, basically, like, this is a popcorny movie. This is like not a work of art in any way. This is just like a fun movie. It's a little slashery. The one thing that though that really disappointed me was the research part. I don't know, like I've told you, like I love research, and I think they really rushed through that. They had like a single scene that sort of explained everything, and the, you know, it was kind of like a, like, you know, the part where you find out about the history of everything and why things happened, and there were these two holy men who like were sort of like trying to, you know, intervene and figure things out, but they only existed in that one scene. It was really rushed, and I really wanted it to be, I guess there's a sort of a I don't know, like an investigator-ish thing about some horror movies or thrillers that I love, where they lay out the puzzle pieces, and some of them fit and some of them don't, and you have to really pay attention to guess on how to put them together. And this was sort of like a detective show where there was a murder, and they just kind of go, here's exactly what happened, here's who did it, here's the history. And then you're kind of like, well, what am I watching this for? And I think that really the reason to watch this is probably for that kind of the, you know, the scares and the kind of the creative like ways of I don't know, of I
there
don't know,
there
killing.
were a lot of jump scares in this movie, and
Yeah.
the music in it did a really good job of ratcheting up the tension. I noticed that they really amped up the music to right when you knew you were going to get a jump scare. There was lots of jump scares in this movie.
Yeah, there really were. Yeah.
I will say, without giving anything away, that when things don't go the way they think they're supposed to go, they go back to the house, and where a lot of more some I think the scariest one of the scariest things happens with a picture at the house, and I'll just say
Yes,
that
that was eerie. I
I
like that.
that is the kind of thing I really like,
Yes.
to be scary, and they come back with evidence, um, that leads to what Jenny was saying, where they examine movies that they picked up of what happened to turn this girl into a demon, and then things continue to go horribly wrong in this warehouse, and I, and as far, I guess, we, the movie is not very long, and it comes to, I liked these, what I considered to be a surprise. I don't know, are we at the end of this movie? Can we?
I think we can get to the end. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked what I considered the surprise that happened in the end, because I wasn't expecting it.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
that was a good ending for me, because I wasn't expecting it. It was a good, solid, um, unexpected conclusion for me,
Mm-hmm.
that I liked, and it helped wrap up the movie in a good, solid way.
I thought that, I think you're right that it did, and it probably added more to the movie that way, because there was some, I wanted to care a little bit more about the characters than I did, because I think that last part would have been like more of a revelation of, like, what was going on. I think that there was something interesting going on there with, like, guilt and resolving guilt and what happens and how
Mhm.
how it can ruin your life.
Right.
And then that, hopefully, a kind of a freedom from that and what that means. But yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I would have liked to see that a little bit more, because it would have been really much more rewarding, I think.
So, in your opinion, is this a movie worth seeing then? Do you recommend people to see this movie or not?
So I guess I would say that if somebody was just like, I'm just super thirsty for some horror, I've got to see something. I want to see something that is going to be kind of fun, and where I can just kind of relax and not, think too much about it. I would say that I would, yeah. If somebody was like, I'm looking for something where, I haven't seen anything really, you know, I haven't seen like a really big thinker for a while, and I want to see something that will give me a lot of meat, then I would say maybe skip it.
Okay, and we saw this on Netflix, so that's where we saw
Yes.
this, and I enjoyed it enough so that I would recommend it. I don't have nearly the background in horror flicks that Jenny does. So I'm going to see. This is kind of going to be. I like them, but
Yeah.
I don't have nearly the background that Jenny does. So I liked this movie, and I can recommend it. I mean, yeah, you don't have to go out of your way, but it was compelling enough for me to recommend it. So
Yeah, yeah,
that
and I think you're right. I mean, it's fun. It's like, it's like a fun time if you ever want to
yeah,
sit and, order a pizza in and, like, hang out, and, then this is about right for that,
right.
I would say. Yeah.
Okay, and now we get to the spoiler review, multi-level, complex psychological thriller, Suspiria. This is, if you haven't seen it, this will be, we have to spoil it because there's no way to talk about it without spoiling it, really, because this is this was not what I expected at all. When I when I was looking for it, I texted Jenny and I said, I can't find this. All I can find is some ballet movie about something. She said, yeah, that's it. And I'm like, what? How is this going to be scary? And so
Yeah.
I am actually going to defer to you to
To
let you
kick us
lead.
off.
Yeah, because I think you know a little bit more about this movie than I do. I mean, obviously I watched it and I have my opinions on it, but I think um,
I
you
have a
know.
lot of time on my hands, so I'm able to probably do a little bit more digging than Jess is because he he probably has a richer life than I do.
No, I got a
But
lot of time on my hands too. I just don't do the research you do.
yeah, I mean it's kind of fun because okay, first of all, I don't want to claim for those of you in the audience, I am not not an expert in any way on the original version. I did see it, the Dario Argento 1977 film Suspiria. Um, if you haven't seen it, it's really kind of it's beautiful, it's lush, it's gorgeous. I mean, it's not really about the characters. It's kind of the writing is not good. Please feel free to flame me on this if you want to. The writing's bad, the acting's really bad. But he has, and Jess, I know you mentioned this before, like loving mood and loving color. And that's really what that is about. It's a total, like a Disney nightmare gone wrong. He spends a lot of, Dario Argento spent a ton of time trying to find the exact perfect colors. He like traveled the world. He did all this stuff. So anyway, that's all I'll probably say about the original, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So the remake, like any remake, I think people just initially were just like, forget it. I don't, and so a lot of people I think didn't like it. I thought that I'll say this, it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, do you like it is one question, and then is it good is the other question. I don't know that I can say that it's good. There's a lot there. I don't know that everything connects, but I really liked it because I thought that there was kind of a lot to chew on. It differs from the original in several ways. I think the very beginning and the setting were kind of where and just the basic storyline of like a witch coven existing in a ballet school that kind of feeds off of, or it's not really even a ballet school, it's kind of like a post-war kind of like dance academy where they
Right.
are really into, they really do dances that aren't beautiful. In fact, they say like the leader, the main, like the woman who's in charge of the dancing and teaching the dancing and the main choreographer, she's sort of like, dance can never be beautiful again. She kept saying that, like it has to be raw and ugly and everything. And so that's how I think it kind of connected to a lot. This is set in 1977 when the original was shot, but it was largely ignored, I think, in the original, but I haven't thought about it very much. But the politics in Germany at that time in 1977, where we were obviously post World War II ending. The wall was up. This school was right up against the wall. In fact, you see people, walking by it all the time to get
Mm-hmm.
into the school, and there are like messages about revolution written on it. And so I think that was really interesting, and that mirrored the struggle internally of the coven. So it was sort of like old fighting the new. Like, do we stay in this? In this, the school, I should say, is in East Berlin versus West Berlin. And so that was, I think, really important because they were very it was sort of more like the old ways, and it was people were fighting, the young people were kind of fighting against that to try to not move on from the Holocaust in any way, but to try to see what is next, like where do we go from here. And I think that that political struggle was mirroring the struggle in the school with the head witches in the coven. Really, there was one that represented the very old way, who was sort of falling apart, and then there was the one who was actually the choreographer. She was kind of starting to wonder if that was the right thing.
And she's played by Tilda Swinton, who is a force of nature in this movie. She's of course an amazing actress. I'd really like to see her someday do some kind of comedy, because she's so malevolent in all the things she does. I mean, I know she can do serious acting. I'd love to see her try her hand at comedy, because she's pretty scary just looking at her. She's got a very severe type of face, and I'd love to see her kind of lighten up and do something just frothy, but
yeah, that would actually be really amazing.
Yeah, and this is the first time I've seen Dakota Johnson in anything, and you see her, who I don't. She's sort of you don't see her emote much in this movie except through her dance.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
She emotes very strongly through her dance, and there's a lot of dance in this. And she does portray some very strong emotions through her dance. And the movie's told, the first 20 minutes are sort of confusing. It's one of those movies that is a kind of a slow burn, because it's told in these sort of vignettes that you have to make your way through. She comes from it's either Mennonite or Amish.
It's Mennonites.
Mennonite.
Yeah.
Okay. She comes from a Mennonite family, and her mother's sick, and she's already left the Mennonite farm, and you get not flashback, but a cutscene to the Mennonite farm where her mother is sick, and you've got Chloe Grace Moretz flipping out in her psychiatrist's office. The psychiatrist plays a big role in this movie, and you've got then you've got scenes at the dance academy, and you've got then you've got reports of hijacking of a plane for, demanding the Bader Meinhof gang, Bader Meinhof gang, to be released from prison. So there's a lot of vignettes in the beginning that you have to. It does connect eventually, but you do have to sit through it. And one of the and there's Dakota Johnson makes her way to Berlin to join this dance academy, and she's immediately the chosen one because her dance is so amazing. And she really is. I mean, it's obvious she went through an enormous amount of training to do this role. I thought it was interesting that I didn't immediately. I picked up on it, but I didn't really know what it meant, because the psychiatrist starts to get worried when Chloe Grace Moretz disappears. She's from the academy, is flipping out that the witches are coming to get her. She's from the dance academy, and he becomes worried when she disappears. So he calls the police, and the police go to investigate. And this is one of the weirdest scenes. The police go to the academy to investigate, and Dakota Johnson and her best friend in the academy are ransacking the office to look for, while the police have the witches otherwise engaged, they're ransacking the office to look for evidence of where Chloe Grace went. Dakota Johnson looks through like some books to see that the witches she doesn't, at this point, none of the pupils know that all the headmistresses are witches, and the witches have the men undressed in a hypnotic state and are like playing with their manhood and pulling out their guns and
basically humiliating them.
Yeah. And Dakota Johnson just sort of looks at it and laughs or smirks. And that should have been my first clue. It wasn't until later that something was going on with Dakota Johnson.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay. Okay. So yes, totally agree. It's interesting that there are a few things, and some of those, you're right. Like at the beginning, there's lots of disparate things going on. And then, like with regard to her family back at the farm in Ohio, I guess, because I remember one of the characters, like who was French or something, asked her where she came from, and she was like, Ohio.
Yeah.
And she was sort of like, oh God, like this kid is like not even close to part of this world. But anyway, when she was there are flashbacks to her mother dying on the farm. I don't know for sure, but I believe that Mennonites don't allow dance. I don't think they allow dancing. And, you see several scenes of her kind of going against her mother, back when she was well. She caught her in the closet masturbating and pulls her out and, like burns her hand with an iron, basically.
Oh, right.
So there are a lot of these things that she's done to really show that she's not a part of that. And later in sitting down with the main choreographer, who she develops this relationship with, sort of a mother-daughter relationship with, she explains things, and she sort of is, it's very clear that she's not a part of that world religiously. Like she's not, she's clearly not a Mennonite. She's, she has already kind of broken away from the old and is becoming, and it shows like that she's sort of part of this new thing, this new like reinvention of what's going on in the world, in the academy. So I think and she goes to, it's interesting that I think in the original, the woman who is plays Susie comes to the academy because she was invited. And Susie was in the remake was not invited to the academy. She just shows up there. She has no formal training. She has nothing. For some reason, the head choreographer, who is one of the witches, I think she's like the witch of grief or something. There's like the one, there's like a mother of tears, a mother of grief, and a mother of sighs, the Suspiria. So she I forgot where I was even going with this, but there's so much going on. But that's actually because my brain just shifted to the sighs, and I was thinking about the first dance that she did. The first dance that Dakota Johnson did, which was done, they made her audition without music. So it was just her breath. It was just her sighs. It was, and that I think is what made the head choreographer, played by Tilda Swinton, notice her. It made it, she just sort of cued in on those sighs. And because Mother Suspiriorum or whatever, because she's the goddess of size, like from the depths, you know, like she's she knew something was going on, that she was
She
somehow
pulled her.
special.
I mean, Tilda Swinton was in a different room and all of a
Yeah.
sudden felt it and came up to watch the audition.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I sort of wonder, because a lot of the questions around this have to do with whether or not, well, and I guess we didn't even say this yet. What ultimately happens at the end is that we find out, after like a progression of things happen, like you said, the library, the scene where she's sort of looking through the books at the which is humiliating the men, the cops. That's sort of like one of our first indications, and then you start to think back, and you're like, oh my God, like there were so many things that she did that were sort of that connected her to being somehow connected to this academy. When she was little, she was obsessed with Berlin. She had to get there. This was, yeah, like this was her, like this was something that she's been drawn to her entire life.
Right. They had to rip out the page in the book because she kept wanting to draw Berlin on the map.
Yes, yes.
And they had to rip the page out in the book when she was little.
Yes.
And
so
then
she was obsessed.
And yeah. And she, you know, she started she started speaking telepathically to Tilda Swinton in bed. When Tilda Swinton sat by her side, she picked up French like overnight.
Yeah. Yes.
That was weird. Because Tilda said, well, you have to learn French if you're, I can't remember the reason, if your French is the language
because
of
dancing, I think.
Yeah,
because
French is the language of dancing, and you're going to need to learn French. So in the next scene, she's like speaking French, and her best friend in the academy is just looking at this and wondering what's going on, and you know, like, how did she learn to speak French? And there are a couple of creepy scenes. There's not a lot of blood necessarily. There are some creepy scenes that happen to the girls who don't want to take part in the program anymore. These very twisted, literally twisting scenes that happen to the girls, and they get stuck in the basement, disfigured and twisted, which is where Chloe Grace ends up. I'm trying to think of some other scenes where we're getting clues that Dakota Johnson's a lot more than we thought. I mean, that Berlin scene when she's a little girl is a big clue. I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot having to do with, like, you know, you feel a lot of this mother, sort of these motherly connections, which I think are mostly false in the academy. I think that these are witches who feed off of the pain of dance. It's a perfect thing because it's so physically painful and it's so taxing, and what they have to go through with their bodies is amazing. It you know, and so there's a reason for them to sort of make these girls create this sort of false familial atmosphere. But I think that with Dakota Johnson and Tilda Swinton, who was the head choreographer, she feels a genuine connection to Susie. She, you know, she really feels that, and they both feel it. And at one point, Dakota Johnson, Susie, says, you love me. I know you love me. I can feel it. And that, you know, that sense of her mother back in Ohio, doing all of these terrible things and really saying that she was sort of a sin. You know, she was on her deathbed and saying, like, this,
she's my smear on the world.
Yes, yes, exactly. And it's not clear where that, you know, where Susie might have come from or what that mother did, but you know, she was not a kind of any kind of mother. So, you know, she was sort of this, so you get a lot of this sense of, like, again, that old and new, and of being reborn, a mother and a daughter, and how the generation carries on. And I don't know, that I thought that was a really interesting thing. And that was definitely one thing that made me start to go, yeah, like, there's more here than meets the eye.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what the the ending dance piece was something to behold.
Oh, and this is one thing that I want to say. So, in with regard to color, that Dario Argento, the original, the creator of the original Suspiria, he was so obsessed with. This film is all in browns and grays and like off-white. It's all very colorless, aside from Susie's hair, which is
Right,
red.
which is an actor in itself. She's got that hair.
Yeah,
Is
and it's
deserves the credit in the movie.
it does, and red hair is like an old fashioned, like a sign of a witch. And
Right.
so that that is kind of the only thing that's colorful that I can think of. But then the end is 100% red. It's just nothing but red.
The dance piece?
The very end, yeah, the very end dance piece. The
Yeah.
the one in the where she's sort of taking her rightful place.
Oh,
Oh, you're
the
talking
very,
about,
very end.
yeah, yeah, the very, very,
I meant the ending dance piece performance where they're
oh,
wearing
yeah.
the red string
That's the
outfit.
red sort of starting to leak out almost.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So, and you see that the eyes are of two of the performers, one who has been bewitched because the best friend who you mentioned,
Right.
because she knew something was up. She had heard from the few women who have left the academy, but not really left. And she knew there was something going on, and she was kind of freaking out. So she went exploring and saw too much. And the witches bewitched her. Her eyes glazed over, although they glazed over a sort of a gray, almost like cataracts. And she was
Yeah.
just, in that next to final dance, I guess, like I would say maybe, they are, she was late to the performance. She joins the performance, and she's just very, like, it's very clear that she's under the control of the witches. But at the same time, Susie, her eyes turn black, and
Hmm.
she is aware of what's going on, and she's starting to feel, I think, because that it her anger sort of awakens when she sees her best friend in this state. She knows something's up, because she's always known.
Yeah. Which leads us to the big finale, which totally surprised me, and I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was so we finally meet this, well, this witch who had, I guess, founded the school or something. There's some few allusions to that. And I think the school actually is named something Marcos Dance Academy, but
Mother Marcos, yeah.
Mother Marcos, who is Mother Suspiriorum, or so we think.
And she's all misshapen, and the idea is they want to get a young girl's body
Mm-hmm.
so that Mother Suspirium, Mother Marcos, can take it over because her body's wasted away.
Right, right.
That's been the whole movie, is supposedly finding a willing donor vessel.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And so then what we see is that Susie accepts Tilda Swinton, the woman she's formed this motherly bond with. Tilda Swinton is saying, like, you have to be this, you have to accept this. Like, you have to be the one to say, okay, like you don't have to go through with this. And she's worried about her. And there's genuine feeling there. Mother Marcos gets really pissed. Like, you know, she sort of half decapitates her or something. And then,
because
you know,
Tilda says something's wrong.
Tilda says something's wrong. Something's going
not
south
right. Yeah,
here.
something's not right here.
Yes. And so Susie accepts, yes, I'm ready. And then Mother Marcos, also Mother Suspiriorum, says, think back on your false mother. Think back on your false mother. And so she imagines her mother back in this Mennonite colony. And then when she sort of turns over, it's Mother Marcos. So she's sort of this fraud after all, who was trying to stay in power and was actually this old regime and, you know, whatever. I mean, it's somehow, I don't know if Susie was always Mother Suspiriorum and where she was before, because these witches were there from the beginning of time. I can't explain that. That's one of the weird tendrils that is left hanging, I think. But Susie is in fact is Mother Suspiriorum for real.
Mother Marcos says, "Who are you?"
Yeah, yeah.
She says, "I am Mother Suspiriorum."
Yes, and one thing that I found interesting, harken back to the beginning when Tilda Swinton was sort of before she had sort of started to see like the air of the old ways. Tilda Swinton had said, dance can never be beautiful again. It can never be joyous again. And what happens is after Susie, you know, sort of unveils herself as Mother Suspiriorum, she looks at the dance, you know, around her and says, this is beautiful. This dance is beautiful. And so I thought really, really cool. Also, I mean, we could also talk about the fact that she opened up her chest and it was sort of like this vagina. I don't know, like, is that indicates mother, or I didn't, if somebody gets that, like, write it in the comments, because
I agree. I wasn't sure about that part.
Yeah. It was clearly something, you know, something female, something obviously mother. It sounded like crying sort of within there of a baby. I don't know. Maybe I need to rewatch that piece, but I kind of I don't know. Maybe it was just some demonstration of extreme female power. I don't know, but.
It was an amazing ending with the women all dancing continually through naked in the basement of the coven. They continued to dance through the whole thing.
Yes, and she was killing the the witches who were sort of like aligned under Marcos and sparing the ones who weren't, and she brought like peaceful death to the women who were in the basement, like her best friend, and the other two women who had left the school but not really left the school. They were sort of in this state between life and death and were in pain, and she grants them like this peaceful death. And yeah, so it's kind of like it's clear that there's like a new sheriff in town,
right?
or maybe finally the right sheriff in town. I don't know, but she seems at the very least more balanced. And then at the very end, she goes to visit the old man,
old psychiatrist.
The old psychiatrist, yes, who had sort of had his own little story where clearly he sort of ignored that the Nazis were coming. His wife was telling him, we have to get out of here. He was sort of like, I think it's going to, like, I think this will blow over, or whatever, or wasn't the right time or something. And she eventually was caught. And we kind of didn't know what was happening to her throughout the film. I think he was under the impression that she had moved to England and started a new family. And then
he kept looking for her
he
and
kept
was
looking
always
for
looking
her.
for her, and Susie, Mother Superiorum, granted him peace
Right.
as a
Right.
as like the final act in the movie.
Yes, she did. He also, we should say that during that last final bloody dance where Susie reveals herself as Mother Suspiriorum, he was brought in
Dragged in.
to bear witness to
Right.
this, which is sort of like there was some crossover with, him and how he was sort of dealing with his wife. And in fact, one of the witches says something interesting, which is in fact how he has dealt with women his whole life clearly, is that she says, women keep telling you the truth and you keep telling them that they're crazy. So I was like, that was really resonant, I think, with me. And so when he was dragged in there and was forced to watch and bear witness, and then, was apparently made his way out of there. I don't remember how, but he was back at home. And like you said, Susie came to him, and I think because she knew what he knew, and she did finally tell him that his wife was in fact in the death camps, and that all around her were women who were holding her hand as she was dying, and that what her final moment of thought, the last thing to run through her head was this memory with her husband. And so
Right.
he's totally rocked by that. And then she has him forget, and she said, she sort of like pulls that from him. And I don't know what I thought of that. I don't know if it's good or bad. I mean, she said that that there's suffering in the world and it has to be remembered, but he is not one who has to suffer.
Right.
So I don't know. And then there was and I should also say, I don't know if you knew this, but Tilda Swinton plays the old man. She also plays Mother Marcos.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought the old man looked made up, but I didn't know that she played the old man.
She did. Yeah. I didn't recognize that anything was kind of amiss until maybe halfway through the film. I don't know. I didn't pick up on it.
I did notice that I thought he didn't look like a natural old man, that he was made up a little bit, but
yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah, so that was kind of cool.
That's very
to learn.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I don't know. And then at the end, which I didn't even realize there was this tiny scene after the credits until
which I didn't see.
Which you didn't see, but really all it is it's sort of this it's basically Susie outside, and she's and she's sort of staring off into the distance, and she kind of goes like this. And so I kind of thought that was like that we were supposed to interpret that as like a kind of mercy of forgetting what we saw, or what I'm not entirely sure, but the director said that it was supposed to be like her looking off into the future of what's going to happen. And I don't know. I thought it I don't know that they really needed it, to be honest with you. But I don't know. Maybe it's because he wants to, make a sequel or something. I'm not sure. But
okay.
So anyway, it's this is really like one of those overall things where, like I said, I deeply enjoyed this. I thought it was I thought there was a lot of connections that could be made. I thought there were I thought that it was beautiful. I thought that there were some really big ideas happening. I don't know that they really all came together and tied up beautifully to really carry through like an analysis, like, oh, this means this because this, and it was more like there were a bunch of different ideas and they kind of came together, but it didn't quite follow through. So I can see why people would be like, maybe whatever, that it was trying too hard or something else. But I I deeply enjoyed it. Would I recommend this to someone else? If they were a really obsessive person like I am, I would say yes. If they were not, I would probably say, maybe not. I'm not sure, because it's 2.5 hours. I mean, it's a commitment.
It is a commitment, and it's a slow burn commitment that doesn't that you need to stick with before it starts to pay off.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I did think it was long, but I do understand at the end, I understood why it had to be that long. And so I enjoyed it once the ending. It's one of those movies, once the ending happened and I started thinking about it more it's one of those movies, once I started thinking about it more the next day, the more I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
The more I put it together in my head, the more I thought about it, the more I thought about all the layers, where it was going. I put all the pieces together in my head, the more I enjoyed it. And so as far as being a scary horror movie, even though it had nice witches in it that I enjoyed, the witch part, it's more of a psychological thriller sort of to me. A complex psychological thriller to me. So I don't know that I can recommend it as a scary movie. I can recommend it as a psychological thriller to somebody that wants to get wrapped up in something with complex layers.
Yeah. Agree. I definitely, I feel the same way. So yeah, not a straight up horror movie. The original is much more of a, I would say, classic horror movie. There are ways to go deep into that movie as well, but I think it's more with the setting and the mood and the music and the fantastic colors that he uses, and the really sort of the dwarfing of everything by using like these giant structures and placing people just in these little small places, to show kind of like how dwarfed we all are. But for this one, I thought it was definitely like the plot was better, even though like the way we described it, it does sound like there isn't a plot. And maybe there's not so much of a plot as a bunch of events that you kind of have to tie together in some way. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's something like where the new one is something like where you have to like puzzles, I guess. And then at the end, you're not even left necessarily with a full puzzle, but I don't know. Maybe we'll get there one day where we can just, get everything, like square everything away. But I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Fair enough, right?
Fair enough. And let's see. So next week we decided we're going to review Hereditary.
Mm-hmm.
And
is it Hereditary or Heredity? I don't remember.
Oh, I thought it was Hereditary, but it might be Heredity.
It's one of those.
Wait, I thought it was Hereditary, but why don't you check real quick?
Yeah, I am. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I might be mistaking it. I know it's a movie that's been recommended to me for like a year and a half now.
It's Hereditary. I'm sorry.
Okay, good. Hereditary, and then a Netflix movie that's supposed to be so scary that people turned it off halfway through, and it's called Veronica, and it involves Ouija boards, which I'm terrified of. Even as a little kid, I was terrified of Ouija boards. So this is going to be a good one for me to be freaked out by.
I love it. I know. Same. I'm really excited about these.
Okay. Okay. So that's our first episode for A Walk in the Woods at Midnight. We hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to leave comments. and suggestions, and overall, whatever your thoughts are. We're open to suggestions since this was our first episode, so please be gentle.
We did the best we could.
Yeah. So as I end every broadcast, peace and love, peace and love. Thank you.